Hey guys, welcome back. Over the last little while, I've got a lot of questions about my puppy. Um, People want to know how old she is, people want to know what kind of breed she is, and more importantly, people want to know what I feed her. So first off, her name is Emma. Now, she's a mixed breed, golden lab, German shepherd, and she was a rescue that we picked up as a puppy 7 years ago. So she's going on her 8th year, and she's never had commercial dog food in her entire life. Ever since day one when we got her, at 10 weeks old, we've always fed her dog food that we've made ourselves. And so while many of the dogs we've known over the years have experienced minor problems like, yeast infections of the ears, other ear problems, skin infections, itchy skin, patches of fur missing, things like that, especially as they get on in age, we haven't experienced anything like that with Emma. But more importantly, and this is the biggest thing I've noticed, is that she doesn't smell. Her fur is so soft and it's so void of the usual dog smells. Even when she's wet, it's phenomenal. I've never really experienced, a dog of her size, and being a lab shepherd mix, all that hair, and her not having, that dog odor. It's really quite amazing. Okay, so let's just dive right into the ingredients first. We'll start with the meat, and then we'll end up with the veggies. And then after that, we'll make a 2-week batch of food, and we'll talk about it as we're putting it together. So first up for the meat, as a base, I always try to use organ meat. Now, if you think of a wolf in the wild, the first thing they go for is the organs. They go for the kidneys, they go for the liver, and they go for the heart. So my theory is there's a reason for this. There's a nutrient profile in those organs that is best suited for canines. So first up, we have a cow kidney, as well as a liver, and a heart. So the great thing about organ meat is per pound, it is the cheapest meat that you can buy. So even though these are the most nutritious meats for my dog, they actually cost me the least amount. So you can't beat that. Now, a lot of these homemade mixes, especially for older dogs, can be deficient in calcium. And so you can go to the pet store and you can buy, calcium supplement powders, or you can simply grind Cuttlebone into the meal. But what I like to do is just get some bone-in chicken or some drumsticks and grind the whole thing up, including the bones, and throw that into the mix. So that's our meat. Now, next up for the veg, I get a lot of this from the garden, which is great. I'll start off with a zucchini, which I'll shred into the mix. As well, a couple carrots from the garden. I've also got some kale that I'll simply chop up and put in there. Now, I've also got 3 or 4 cups of shelled peas. You can also use green beans, cut up to about 1 inch long. Or you can use snap peas that you cut up to a similar length. Or really, any of the other beans that you can grow in your garden, they're just fine. And then finally, I got a 1.5 cups of blackberries. Blackberries, as nutritious they are for us, they're just as nutritious for your dog. And I haven't met a dog that doesn't like blackberries. Finally, this one most of you will have to get from the store is I'll throw some quinoa. This is simple organic red quinoa. You can also throw flaxseed. Oatmeal works great, steel cut oats. You can even use rice in a pinch, although I try to steer clear from rice. Or the other thing you can add in is sweet potatoes or yams. Basically with this mix, I'm trying to do 40% protein, 40% veg, and then 20% carbohydrates. Now, as an addendum, if you're not growing, any legumes, beans or peas in your garden, you can simply get these no salt added 6 bean blends. So they'll have kidney beans, garbanzo beans, pinto beans, lima beans. You can put these in there as well if you're not growing your own. So now that we've got our ingredients, let's go ahead and make the mix. Okay, so to make 2 weeks worth, I'm going to use 2 big pots here. Now, let's just get rid of the ingredients that are easy to get rid of right away. And we'll do the peas. Oh, I froze these earlier, so they all stuck together. That's all right, because we're going to boil this, so that's okay. That'll all break apart. Oh, next up, just going to sharpen the knife. Okay, now let's just get our kale bits in there. Now I like to cut the veggies up as fine as possible because I feel like in the wild, if a wolf was going to go and eat the contents, of its prey, which is usually a herbivore, most of that vegetative material would be pre-digested. So I feel it's doing, the dog a disservice if you don't grind this up into small pieces. Okay, next up we got the carrots. Now with these guys, let's just grate them. Okay. So let's throw our quinoa in. Okay. Next up, let's do some of this zucchini. I tend to use the overripe ones because, it's just getting shredded and cooked, so the puppy doesn't seem to mind. Okay. Okay. Wow, that zucchini smells a lot like pumpkins, when they get ripe like that. Okay, so lastly we have our meat. So let's just start with the kidney. Now, I don't cut this stuff super small. I'll cut it in half so that each pot gets the same amount. And then I cut it maybe half that. Maybe a little bit smaller than a golf ball. I'd say half a golf ball. I guess it also depends on the size of your breed. If you're doing this for a little Shih Tzu or a Chihuahua, it's going to look a little different. The kidney is the hardest one of them to cut because of this center cartilage here. Which is why you need a sharp knife. Okay, so next up we have the liver. Now the liver is the slimiest of them, but it is fairly easy to cut. Again, I split it up so it's 2 even sections, 1 for each pot. Cut it into fairly, medium-sized chunks. Go. Okay, and the last of the red meat is the heart. Now the heart is about the same consistency as the kidney, but without that center cartilage piece, it's super easy to cut. Okay. That was the heart. So last up we have the chicken, and this is what actually gets put through the food processor because you want to grind up those bones. So I'm going to go ahead and run a few of these through the food processor. Okay, so as luck would have it, my blender actually burnt out, so I had to do it in the magic bullet. Whatever you can do to grind down those bones, is a-okay. So that was 2 of them. I'm going to go ahead and do the rest of them. There was 10 total, so I got to do them in batches of 2 because that's all that my magic bullet can handle. All right, so now we have both of our large pots made up. I'm next going to add 4 cups of water to each pot. So now that we've got our water in there, let's get these guys on the stove so that we can cook them. Now I know many of you subscribe to the raw food diet, and I'm not opposed to the raw food diet, but I also don't feel comfortable feeding raw ingredients from our meat and poultry industry. I just don't think the practices are safe enough for either myself or my dog to eat that kind of stuff raw. So here we are on the stove. I just turn it on to maximum. I bring these guys to a boil. As soon as it starts boiling, I turn the heat off, I stir it, and I just let it sit. There's no need to overcook this. Is it good, puppy? I think so. So there you go, guys. I think the puppy approves. Now remember, this diet works for my dog. It might not work for your dog. Always consult a professional veterinarian or animal nutritionist whenever you're going to change up your pet's diet like this. But honestly, doing this for the last 7+ years, I don't think I could ever go back to commercial dog food again, no matter what dog I owned. As always, leave any questions or comments down below. Do you make your dog food? If you do, what's the recipe? Do you want to share with the rest of us? Or do you have any homemade treat recipes? I'd love to learn some treat recipes for Emma. So if you got any, leave them in the comments section. Click subscribe if you haven't already. For those of you that have, I really do appreciate the support. And I'll see you next time.